All right, get ready for a deep dive. We're going deep into philosophy today.
Sounds fun.
Today, we're tackling epiphenomenalism.
Epiphenomenalism.
Yeah, so this is the idea that our mental states, our thoughts and feelings,
Okay.
they don't actually cause anything in the physical world.
Whoa, really?
I know. It sounds kind of crazy at first.
It does go against what we tend to think. We usually think our decisions and desires, they lead to actions.
It's true.
Epiphenomenalism says, well, not so fast.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like that philosophical question, the one about if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it,
Right.
does it make a sound?
Yeah.
Epiphenomenalism asks a similar question, but about our minds. So if our thoughts and feelings, if they have no impact on the physical world,
Right.
do they really matter?
It's a good question.
It is, right?
To really understand how anyone could think this way,
Yeah.
we need to go back in time, back when dualism was really popular in philosophy.
Okay, so dualism, that's like the classic mind-body problem, right?
Exactly.
How can this non-physical mind interact with our physical bodies and brains?
Yeah, that's the problem. And epiphenomenalism, it came about as a way to address this. So instead of saying the mind causes physical events,
Okay.
it says maybe mental events are caused by the physical events in the brain,
Uh-huh.
but they don't cause anything physical themselves.
So it's a one-way street. The brain affects the mind,
Yeah,
but the mind doesn't affect the brain
that's basically it.
or anything else.
Yeah, you can think of it like a shadow, maybe.
Okay.
The shadow is caused by an object blocking the light,
Right,
but the shadow doesn't actually do anything, right? It can't move the object.
right, right.
Or anything else, really.
Okay, I can see the logic there,
Yeah,
but it still feels a little weird.
I can see that.
Like, are there any really good arguments for this?
Well, there are some.
Okay.
Often they start with this idea, you know how physics tries to explain everything in the physical world?
Yeah.
So if a mental event, like making a decision, were to cause a physical event, like doing an action,
Yeah.
wouldn't that mean something non-physical is messing with physics?
Yeah, I guess that would really throw a wrench in things.
Exactly. Epiphenomenalism avoids that by saying mental events are just a byproduct of physical processes. They're there, but they don't change how physics works.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about all the complexity of our thoughts and feelings? It seems like they must be doing something.
It's a good point. This brings us to another argument for epiphenomenalism. It has to do with simplicity.
Okay.
The psychologist Wundt, he noticed something. Even simple sensations, like feeling warm,
Yeah.
they're linked to really complex things happening in the brain.
Right.
So the brain's already doing all this work for basic sensations. So
Yeah.
maybe conscious experience isn't necessary to cause behavior.
Okay, but then our conscious experience is just as irrelevant.
It's a common objection.
It just seems so obvious that our feelings and thoughts affect what we do. Like when I want coffee, that's why I go and make it.
Right, it seems absurd to think your desire had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
The epiphenomenalist would say that you're mixing up correlation and causation.
Oh, okay.
Just because two things happen together, it doesn't mean one causes the other.
Yeah.
They would say a physical event in the brain could cause both the desire for coffee and the action of getting up to make it.
So like when a rooster crows and then the sun rises,
Exactly.
they happen together,
Yeah,
but the rooster doesn't cause the sunrise.
right. The epiphenomenalist would say the same thing is happening with our mental states and our actions. Something else is causing both, but the thought itself isn't making it happen.
Okay, so that's a good response to the "it's obviously not true" argument. But what about evolution? If consciousness doesn't do anything, why would natural selection favor it?
That's a great point.
Like, why evolve something that has no purpose?
It's another classic objection.
It's like evolving a fancy tail that doesn't help us survive.
The response is a little subtle. Epiphenomenalists would say natural selection acts on the processes that lead to both the experience and the behavior.
So it's not picking the experience itself,
Right.
but the brain stuff that causes both the experience and the behavior.
Exactly. Think about it. An early human sees a saber-toothed tiger.
Oh, no.
The fear they feel might not make them run, but the brain processes that cause both the fear and the running, those could be selected for, right? Because it helps them survive.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
Right.
But if feelings like pleasure and pain don't affect our behavior, wouldn't we enjoy bad things and hate good things?
You're right. That's a problem. And this point was raised by William James,
Okay.
a big critic of epiphenomenalism. He argued that if pleasure and pain don't cause anything, then evolution wouldn't connect them to good or bad things.
Right. Like, why would we evolve to love poison and hate healthy food?
Exactly. Wouldn't make sense.
So how do epiphenomenalists deal with that?
They use the idea of a neural reward system.
Okay.
So imagine a network in your brain.
Okay.
And this network makes you want to do things that feel good.
Okay, so like a reward.
Exactly. And it makes you avoid things that feel bad. So even if the feelings don't cause our actions directly, they're still linked to this system that shapes your behavior.
So even if the feeling of this is good doesn't make me eat the apple, the reward system is still driving that behavior.
Yes, it's the reward and punishment system, the actual mechanics of it, that
Right.
makes us act, not just the feeling. And this system, it can evolve over time.
Okay, yeah, I could see how that fits, but if our actions aren't really driven by our mental states, how do we even know other people have minds?
You've hit on another big objection. It's the problem of other minds.
Okay.
We figure out what other people are thinking by looking at how they act.
Right.
But if those actions aren't caused by mental states, then what's the point?
Then it seems like the only mind I could be sure of is my own.
It's a worry, for sure. But epiphenomenalists say we can still figure out what others are thinking. We just look at similar physical structures and reactions.
So since humans have similar brains, we probably have similar thoughts, even if those thoughts don't make us act.
Exactly. And they'd even argue that this is stronger evidence than looking at behavior,
Interesting. How so?
because lots of different thoughts could lead to the same action, right?
That's true. Okay, I get it. But now for the real question. If epiphenomenalism is true, how do we even know it's true?
You found the most powerful objection.
Yeah, it seems like a contradiction.
It's called the self-stultification argument. If our mental states don't cause our beliefs, including the belief in epiphenomenalism, then it seems like our beliefs don't depend on our thoughts at all.
So any claim about our minds, including saying they don't cause anything, would just be meaningless.
Exactly, like saying, I have no thoughts, which is itself a thought. But epiphenomenalists have a few ways to try and address this. One involves changing how we think about knowledge. What if knowledge isn't about cause and effect? What if it's about a counterfactual relationship?
A what-if scenario. I like where this is going.
For example, you wouldn't say, I'm in pain unless you actually were, right?
Right.
So even if the pain doesn't make you say those words, it's still true that you wouldn't say them unless you were in pain.
So it's more like the pain is required for the statement, even if it's not causing it directly.
Exactly. And this can still be true even if mental states don't directly cause things.
That's a neat way to get around that. Are there other ways they explain it?
There are some philosophers, like David Chalmers, have a different approach. They think there's more to a person than just the physical body and brain.
Okay.
They think we directly experience our experiences,
Yeah.
not through cause and effect. He says, the justification of my belief about experiences accrues not just in virtue of my physical features, but in virtue of some of my non-physical features, namely the experiences themselves.
So we know our experiences directly, not because they call our beliefs.
Right, and that gets around the problem by finding another way to justify those beliefs. So it's not that the pain makes you believe you're in pain, it's your direct connection to the pain itself that justifies that belief.
Wow, epiphenomenalists really have to jump through hoops to explain this.
They do, and we've only just begun to scratch the surface. Next time, we'll see how epiphenomenalism holds up in the modern world of materialism.
All right, listener, get ready for part 2. We're going even deeper into this philosophical rabbit hole.
You'd think with the rise of materialism, the idea that everything is physical,
Right.
that epiphenomenalism would just disappear.
It would seem that way. If mental events are just brain events,
Yeah.
how could they not have physical effects?
It seems pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
But it's not that straightforward. It gets more complicated when we start talking about the properties of an event.
Okay.
The mental and physical properties, even if we're talking about material stuff.
Okay, so how does that bring us back to epiphenomenalism?
But there are a few ways this gets tricky.
Okay.
One is through externalism. It's a view about intentionality.
Okay. Intentionality, that's just a fancy word for aboutness, right?
Exactly.
Like how my thought, I want coffee, is about, wanting coffee.
Yes, that's it. And externalists say the content of our thoughts, what they're about,
Yeah.
depends on things outside our bodies.
So the meaning of my thought, this is water.
Yeah,
It doesn't just depend on what's happening in my brain.
right.
It also depends on the actual water.
Exactly, that's the idea. But here's the problem. What we do should depend on what's happening inside our body, right?
Right, like our brain, our nerves.
Our muscles, all of that.
Makes sense. My thoughts out in the world can't move my arm.
Right. But if externalism is true,
Yeah.
and the content of our thoughts depends on stuff outside us,
Yeah.
then our actions can't be completely determined by those thoughts.
That is tricky. So my thought, this is water, might make me take a sip, but it's not the meaning of the thought that makes my arm move. It's the stuff happening in my brain.
Exactly. It's like epiphenomenalism sneaking back in, even if we're talking about a materialist view. And this brings us to anonymous monism.
Okay.
This was a big idea for Donald Davidson. He said, every mental event is the same as a physical event, but here's the key. There are no psychophysical laws.
Wait, no psychophysical laws?
Yeah.
So no laws connecting mental and physical stuff, don't we need laws for causation to even work?
You got it. That's the core of it. Davidson agreed that causation needs laws,
Okay.
but he thought the laws for mental events are just physical laws.
So even if my decision to get coffee seems to cause me to get up, it's really the physical stuff in my brain that's doing the causing. It's sounding a lot like epiphenomenalism again.
It does, doesn't it? Many philosophers think anomalous monism is just epiphenomenalism in disguise. It keeps the mind-body connection, but takes away the mind's causal power. And then there's multiple realization.
Okay, multiple realization. That sounds intense.
It is a bit of a head-scratcher.
Okay.
So multiple realization is the idea that the same mental state, like, say, believing Paris is the capital of France,
Uh-huh.
can happen with different physical states in different people.
Okay, so your brain and my brain could represent that belief in different ways, but we both still hold the same belief.
Exactly. But here's where the epiphenomenalist problem comes back. Philosopher Jaegwon Kim, he argued that if mental properties are different from their physical stuff,
Okay,
and that physical stuff is enough to cause actions,
okay.
then the mental properties themselves don't really do anything.
So if my brain state is all I need to book a flight to Paris, what's the point of the belief itself?
That's Kim's exclusion argument in a nutshell. It suggests that materialism plus multiple realization equals no mental causation.
But wait, can't an event have more than one cause? Like a car accident could be caused by both speeding and icy roads. Couldn't both mental properties and physical states be enough to cause an action?
That's the overdetermination response.
Okay.
But it has its own problems. Critics point out that mental and physical aren't separate like speeding and ice. They're linked. And the idea that all our actions have two causes, mental and physical, seems a bit much.
So does that mean mental properties don't do anything?
Not necessarily. Philosophers have some ideas about how to save mental causation. One is to challenge the whole idea of causation we're using here.
So we need a new way to think about cause and effect.
Maybe. Some folks think these arguments use a simple model of causation, like billiard balls bumping into each other.
Okay.
They suggest different ways to understand causation, where mental properties can still be important.
So not just events pushing each other around, but more complex interactions between the mental and the physical.
Exactly. Another approach is to say, well, maybe mental properties don't cause things in the hoop sense, but they're still important.
I have a feeling there's a but coming.
But they might contribute to explaining behavior, even if they don't directly cause it.
It's like saying the rules of chess don't move the pieces, but you need them to understand the game.
Exactly. And epiphenomenalists might say, sure, there are other ways to think about causation, but the real oomph, the actual making things happen, that's all physical. Mental stuff is along for the ride, but it's not driving.
Okay, so those are some ways to try and save mental causation. But are there any arguments for it that aren't just about fixing this exclusion problem?
There are, and they often talk about qualia.
Qualia, right.
The feeling of what it's like to experience things, the redness of red, the pain of pain. This stuff is hard to explain with just physical stuff.
Right, it's hard to imagine neurons firing and creating the feeling of what it's like to experience red.
Exactly. It's the hard problem of consciousness. And some people think this problem, this gap in our understanding, puts us in a similar spot to epiphenomenalism.
How so?
Well, even if we say qualia are physical,
Yeah.
we still don't get how they make experience happen.
So it's like we know certain brain states have qualia, but we don't know how or why.
Yes, and without that, it's hard to see how qualia could cause actions, even if they're physical.
So it's like we're back to epiphenomenalism, at least when it comes to qualia. But putting that aside for a moment, hasn't there been research suggesting our conscious thoughts might not be in control?
Oh, absolutely. That's a whole other can of worms. Let's talk about Benjamin Libet's experiments. So Libet's experiments...
Yeah, those are the ones with the finger movements, right?
Right. People had to say when they felt like moving their finger.
Uh-huh.
But they were also hooked up to, brain scanners.
Okay.
And Libet found this brain signal. It's called the readiness potential, or RP.
RP, okay.
And this RP showed up before people were even aware of wanting to move.
So their brains were getting ready to move before they even decided to. That's kind of spooky, like our brains are making decisions without us.
It definitely challenges our idea of being in control. And this kind of research, it didn't stop there. Later studies by Haynes and others, they found similar brain activity
Oh, wow.
that could actually predict choices, even seconds before people knew what they were going to choose.
Seconds. Really? So what's the point of thinking if our brains have already decided?
These findings definitely raise big questions about conscious will. And there's more. Wegner and others did studies showing we can even have illusions of control.
What do you mean?
We think we're controlling something, but we're not.
Oh, like those mind control magic tricks. You think you're moving the other person's arm, but it's all a trick?
Exactly. If we can be fooled so easily, it makes you wonder how much control we really have.
Okay, I'm starting to freak out a little bit. Are you saying free will is just an illusion?
Hold on, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's important to remember that these studies have their critics.
Okay, good. I was about to join a commune and give up all my possessions.
Uh, Critics point out that these studies often use really artificial situations,
Okay.
choosing when to wiggle your finger in a lab.
Right.
That's not like deciding to take a new job or get married.
True, those are big life decisions.
Real life is more complex, right? There are emotions, values, consequences. Our brains might work differently in those situations.
Okay, yeah.
And other critics say even if these studies show some unconscious influence,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean conscious intentions don't matter at all, especially in real world stuff.
So maybe it's not one or the other. Maybe it's both working together somehow.
Exactly. We don't fully understand how the brain works yet. Neuroscience is still young.
True. There's so much we don't know. Okay, so maybe free will is still on the table. This whole discussion about epiphenomenalism has been fascinating.
It really gets you thinking about the mind, about what causes things, about consciousness itself.
It really does. So to our listener, if you're into philosophy, if you like thinking about these big questions about the mind and body, we hope this deep dive into epiphenomenalism has given you a lot to think about,
It really challenges how we think about our own minds.
even if you disagree with it.
Yeah.
Thinking about it helps us understand consciousness better. It helps us see how amazing and mysterious the connection is between our inner world and the physical world.
It's a mystery that never gets old.
It doesn't. So many questions, not enough answers. But that's the beauty of it, right?
It is.
It keeps us curious. So until next time, keep thinking, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions.